The Phantom Horseman. I never believed in ghosts. I used to mock the old-timers who talked about curses and hauntings, chalking it all up to superstition and an overactive imagination. But that was before I saw him. The Horseman. And now I can never forget what I saw, nor will I ever be the same again. It started on an autumn evening, when the air was crisp and the wind carried a chill that made you shiver beneath your coat. My name is Thomas Reed, and I had just moved back to my childhood home in the small town of Millfield. The town was quiet, almost too quiet, nestled between thick woods and rolling hills. It had a certain charm to it, but there was an undercurrent of unease that seemed to linger, like a shadow just beyond the corner of your vision. I hadn't been back long before I began hearing stories about the Phantom Horseman, a figure who was said to haunt the outskirts of Millfield. Old tales, whispers passed down by the locals, spoke of a rider dressed in dark, tattered clothing, his face obscured by a hood or a mask, riding a massive black steed. The horseman was no mere legend, they said. He was a real spirit, cursed to roam the land, seeking vengeance for a crime committed long ago. I dismissed it, of course. I was an adult now, and these were nothing but stories designed to scare children. But then, one night, I decided to see the woods for myself. I had been walking along the edge of the forest, following an old trail that led to the hill above the town. It was a path I used to take when I was younger, one that offered a perfect view of the town below. I was lost in thought, remembering the carefree days of my youth when I first heard it, the sound of hooves. Soft at first, just a distant echo, but then louder, faster, until the ground seemed to shake beneath me. I turned and there he was, the horseman. He was riding toward me at full speed, his horse's hooves thundering against the earth. The rider was tall, clad in a long black coat, and his face was hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat or a mask, I couldn't tell. His horse, an imposing black beast, was as much a part of the nightmare as the rider himself. Its eyes glowed red, like embers from a dying fire, and its breath came out in heavy, misty puffs. The horseman's presence filled the air with a feeling of dread, something ancient and powerful that made my heart race. I froze. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my feet wouldn't move. The horseman galloped toward me, his figure silhouetted against the darkening sky, and then just as quickly as he had appeared, he vanished, disappearing into the night like a shadow swallowed by darkness. I stood there, shaking, unable to comprehend what had just happened. My mind screamed for rational explanations, but deep down, I knew I had seen something I couldn't explain. I didn't speak to anyone about it, didn't want to sound crazy, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the horseman had been real, that he was real. Over the next few days, strange things began to happen. I started hearing the sound of hooves in the distance at night when I was alone in my house. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, but then I saw him again, standing on the hill near the forest's edge, his figure illuminated by the pale light of the moon. He didn't move, just stood there watching, waiting. I tried to tell myself it was a trick of the light, a figment of my mind playing tricks on me. But the fear gnawed at my insides. I started staying inside after dark, afraid to venture out into the night, even though I knew deep down that the horseman wasn't confined to the shadows. One evening, I went to the local pub to meet up with some old friends. I hadn't seen them in years, and the warm, familiar atmosphere of the pub should have been comforting. But as soon as I walked in, the conversation stopped. Everyone turned to look at me, and their faces were pale, filled with something I couldn't quite place. I sat down at the bar, my unease growing, and asked the bartender for a drink. "Don't go out at night, Tom," the bartender said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "The horseman. He's been seen again. You don't want to be out there when he comes." "Horseman?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I thought that was just an old story. The bartender shook his head slowly. "No, it's real. The horseman comes for those who disturb his resting place, those who venture into the woods after dark. People used to think he was just a legend, but I've seen him myself. He comes when you least expect it. He's not just a ghost, he's something darker. I felt the room closing in on me, the weight of the words hanging in the air like a noose. The horseman wasn't a myth. He was something real. Something cursed. Later that night, I decided to take a walk to clear my mind. I didn't expect to see him again, but when I passed by the forest's edge, I heard it, the unmistakable sound of hooves, growing louder, faster. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I turned, and there he was once more, riding toward me with an unnatural speed. But this time I could see his face. It wasn't a mask or a hat that obscured his features, it was something worse. His face was pale and twisted, with eyes that glowed an eerie red, full of malice and ancient fury. His mouth was twisted in a silent scream, his teeth sharp and jagged, like a predator that had long since forgotten how to speak. I wanted to run. I should have run. But my legs wouldn't move. My body was frozen in place as he drew closer, his horse's hooves pounding the ground like a heartbeat. I could feel the air thickening, suffocating me, as though the very atmosphere was alive with his presence. And then, just as before, he vanished. One moment he was there, the next he was gone, leaving behind only the faint echo of hooves and a lingering chill in the air. I didn't know what to do anymore. I couldn't escape the horseman. He was everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Every night he appeared, his presence growing more intense, more violent. His hooves echoed in my dreams, and his red eyes stared at me from the darkness. I could feel his anger, his desire for vengeance, and it was directed at me. But why me? I soon learned the truth. The horseman wasn't just a spirit of vengeance. He was a man, once a man who had been wronged long ago, his life stolen from him in the very woods I had been walking through. The old story spoke of a land dispute, a betrayal, and a man's brutal murder at the hands of those he had trusted. His death had been a dark stain on the land, and in his rage, he had cursed the area, swearing that anyone who dared to enter would pay the price for his suffering. The horseman wasn't looking for anyone. He was looking for the one who had disturbed his curse, the one who had dared to step into his domain. It was me. In my arrogance, I had disregarded the warnings. I had been the one to unknowingly cross the threshold. And now, the horseman was after me not because of something I had done, but because of the land itself, the land I had unwittingly disturbed. I tried everything to escape, moving away, changing towns, staying indoors, but the horseman found me. He was always there, just beyond my sight, a constant presence that haunted me wherever I went. And with each passing night, his fury grew stronger. I've seen the horseman many times now. His figure is etched into my memory, his red eyes following me through every darkened street, every desolate field. I'm no longer sure if I'm dreaming or awake when he appears. All I know is that the curse is real and there is no escape.